Welcome to the Making Kids Count podcast, brought to you by Kentucky Youth Advocates, where we sit down with policymakers, community leaders, and youth to discuss ideas to make Kentucky the best place to be young. Welcome to the Making Kids Count podcast. I'm Shannon Moody with Kentucky Youth Advocates, our Chief Policy and Strategy Officer here at KYA. And just as a reminder for folks, it is day 24 that we are recording this of the 60-day legislative session, which means there's a couple more weeks of bill filings and ample time for priority bills to get moving. Just a reminder for folks to check out KYA's bill tracker on our website and stay up to date on blueprint priority bills and other bills that are good for kids and families. So today I'm joined by the Kentucky General Assembly chairs for the Families and Children Committee. We start with a quick introduction of Representative Samara Heavrin, who represents District 18, which includes Grayson County and part of Hardin County. And then we are also joined by Senator Danny Carroll, who represents District 2 in far western Kentucky, which includes Ballard, Carlisle, Livingston, Marshall, and McCracken counties. So you both have graciously joined KYA before on our podcast. For our listeners, can you just briefly share what led you to run for office and what's been your main goals while in your leadership positions? And let's start with you, Senator Carroll.
Ooh, that's a tough question. I've been in public service my entire life. I spent 24 years in law enforcement, retired from that, took over as the CEO of an Easter Seals affiliate in Paducah. So that was kind of who I am, who I have become over the years. And the opportunity just presented itself. And just one day a call was made. I knew that my predecessor was retiring. And someone called, suggested that I run for it. And the thought just started there. And we built on that. And 12 years later, I'm still here.
And Representative Heavrin, what about you? What brought you into your position?
Honestly, I had been in public service. I served as a staffer in the U.S. Senate and for the Kentucky State Treasury. And when the opportunity came up, I decided to run because I thought it was really important for young people, especially young girls, to recognize they had a voice at the table. And so that's what really encouraged me to run. You can't be what you can't see. And so I wanted to make sure that I was somebody that young girls could look up to and see that, hey, I can be in the Kentucky General Assembly or I can be in Kentucky government too.
Well, that's awesome. Both of you came for different reasons, but in your leadership roles, you're representing and making a lot of decisions on Kentucky's children and families. And you will see a lot come through your committees. As chairs of the Families and Children Committees, you've both been key allies with child advocates on child welfare and child care issues. So I'd like to dig into both of those items today, and we might jump into a couple of other items, but really looking forward to starting with child care options. So you've both led efforts in the General Assembly to improve child care for families and to strengthen the child care infrastructure for families, communities, for business owners. Representative Heavrin, you recently filed House Bill 6. Can you tell us a little bit more about that large piece of legislation?
Yes, thank you so much. I want to start off by saying Chairman Carroll and I have been working on child care since 2022. I kind of got into the space. He's been involved for a lot longer from a provider standpoint, but I got involved in 2022 because I really recognized people were not going back to work after COVID, and it wasn't because of the unemployment money or the COVID payments we were receiving. It was because there were workforce barriers, and so that's what got me into it. I wanted to make sure that parents could go back to work and live the best lives for themselves, making the best economic decision they can, and allowing kids to be in quality care for working parents. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And we've been partners in trying to solve that. We've had task force, we've had committee meetings over this. And so what House Bill 6 does, it brings a group. So about 18 months ago in 2024, a group came together called the Kentucky Child Care Collaborative, and it was a group of 40 stakeholders that had all different types of beliefs that came together and said, "Hey, these are the things that we feel like would be really good to help improve childcare." Chairman Carroll and I both got the opportunity to address the committee and just say, "Hey, here's what we would like to see happen, but we trust you to figure this out." And so, what House Bill 6 is it's a combination of that and hearing the recommendations. Anything that came from the Kentucky Child Care Collaborative were all agreed upon among these 40 stakeholders. And I think that's something really important for us to think about is, a lot of times people are like, oh, no one agrees in Frankfurt, no one agrees in DC. And I think what this shows is that we all we can find consensus. And so I think this is a really good start to childcare. I know Senator Carroll's also working on a few other things. But what House Bill 6 does, it's consensus legislation that's focused on long-term affordability, quality, and access. And we're really trying to focus on the working family and affordability and helping middle-class families because those are the ones that end up getting hurt the most sometimes, from my perspective. And so there's several different parts of it. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds just because I want to be conscientious of our time. But I think it's a really good starting point. I look forward to getting it over to the Senate and continuing to work with Chairman Carroll to make it a better bill.
Well, we're really excited to see that dropped. And I know also Senator Carroll, you've been a longtime advocate, as Representative Heavrin mentioned, for childcare and early childhood education. I know you're working on a couple of things in that regard this session. Talk to us a little bit about what you've got moving this session.
And just to kick my response off, I did get a chance to look at House Bill 6 in depth last night, and there's some really good things in that bill. We were kind of lost 2, 3 years ago when the Horizons Act was not did not make it through the system on where to go. And the chamber stepped in, and the working group that was put together was very far stretching as far as input, and that was very much welcome. So I'm pretty excited about where that's going. I do have a couple pieces of legislation. One was heard in committee this morning. That was Senate Bill 160, I think it is. And that bill basically just addresses some of the regulatory issues within childcare and would give the cabinet more latitude when situations arise as to whether or not they would pull a center's license, and also kind of provide some protection for brand new centers, in that the cabinet would be providing routine support during a 6-month probationary period, and they would not be able to cite that particular facility unless they intentionally did something that they knew was in violation of policy or there were kids put at risk by inaction. So a lot more support to make sure that new providers get off on the right foot. And the other bill that we have, it has not been filed yet. As a matter of fact, I just got out of a meeting with the Dean of Education at the University of Kentucky. And this will be a pilot project that we're looking at. And this would basically replace the Kentucky All-Stars program that is currently underway. And I know there's language in House Bill 6 that revamps the Kentucky All-Stars program. So there will be some discussions on how we proceed with this. But basically, the bill kind of transitions the focus on child care and early childhood education to kindergarten readiness. And funding would be based on performance-based funding based on kindergarten readiness. And the practical aspect, if a center has 5 kids that are going into kindergarten, when they get to kindergarten, there would be an assessment conducted. And if all 5 of those kids tested kindergarten ready, then that provider would get basically $2,000 for each child. So there is a funding stream, and that funding stream would be open to every provider, not just all-star providers. If they're a 3, 4, 5-star, they get the majority of the funding now. That's the higher rates of awards through the Kentucky All-Stars. It would be all centers would have access to this money, as would in-home providers, as would low-income families. If we would provide resources for those families if their kids, when they get to kindergarten, are assessed as kindergarten ready. That family would also get that payment. And the idea is it would provide incentives for all levels of childcare to grow. It would be money that the lower levels would have to improve their quality, to invest. It would be incentives for new providers to come in. And obviously for the established larger providers, it would be a significant source of revenue each year. And so on that side of it, those are the positive aspects of the bill. The other side of it, right now we have about a 50% kindergarten readiness average in our state. And we know the impact that has on our kids' success between kindergarten and third grade in a lot of different areas. So the hope is that this will increase those rates and we get up to 75, 85% of our kids that are kindergarten ready. That will allow kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade teachers to focus more on higher attainment in education at those early years and not be spending so much time trying to get those kids who are not kindergarten ready caught up. So that there are other provisions in the bill, but that's at the crux of the bill. And it will be a pilot project. And that's what UK will be doing. And we're structuring on how that would work as far as a proof of concept pilot project before that would be implemented.
Well, childcare is such an interesting industry because not only does it impact kids' outcomes and well-being, as you talked about, readiness for kindergarten, it obviously impacts parents' ability to go to work and be part of the workforce. So it's complex. It sounds like you all are taking some innovative approaches, really collaborative approaches to address complex issues. And we're really grateful to have you all leading the charge around that and really thinking about both the community-wide impacts as also the individual impacts on our kids and our parents. So I'm glad to hear those updates and really looking forward to seeing what progresses throughout this 2026 session. Relatedly, when we're talking about another kind of sector that has a lot of effect and impact on the well-being of kids overall through their lifespan is in the child welfare system. And you both have shown a lot of passion and really have taken a lot of action in this space when it comes to kids and families that are involved in the child welfare system. So Representative Heavrin, I know in the interim you met with a group of young people through the True Up initiative as well as other former foster youth. We also we discussed a couple of items there, but based on what you've been doing in the interim, kind of what you're preparing for this legislative session, what are some of the issues and steps that the legislature can take this session to address our child welfare system?
That's a really big question, Shannon. And we actually, Senator Carroll and I have been working with a group of folks on the House and the Senate to try to figure out what we need to do. I think 2 years ago, we started running a child welfare bill. Representative Nick Wilson has carried that, and just the importance of making sure that there are always things that we can do to grow and to make our child welfare system better. What a privilege and honor it is to get to sit down with those foster care kiddos and hear from them. I think I've been doing that for the last 2 or 3 years, and I always end up very emotional, but I'm so grateful for the vulnerability they share and the opportunity for us to actually hear issues that are pertaining to them. Some issues I took away from our meeting, one is human trafficking within the foster care system and how that affects whether it's rural Kentucky or urban Kentucky. It's everywhere. And so, trying to put an emphasis, we've started a conversation with the city of Louisville to see what we can do better on that. And I'm grateful for the partnership. Chairman Carroll and I'll let him talk about this as well, because I think this might be something he wants to talk on, is that we both sit on the child fatality and near fatality review panel. Gives us a very different perspective on child welfare in Kentucky. And so what that is any child that almost dies or dies, which is from 18 years or below, 18 years to zero, we review their death case and have to decide whether that was on purpose, what we can learn from that. And so, one thing that we're going to be talking about is ingestion and what that looks like for child welfare. I think one of the things that have also got brought up is the education portion for foster care kiddos, especially in residential facilities and A6 schools. I don't think you'll hear anything on that during this session, but be prepared that it's coming, and what we can do to make sure that kids are getting the education they deserve. Especially, as we know, education can take you anywhere in the world, and we want to make sure that our kids, when they're leaving the foster care system out of high school, that they're receiving the education they deserve, because that can really truly lift them up out of the circumstance that they're in and give them a wide open future. And so I'll kick it off to Chairman Carroll because I know he's working on some stuff, but I'm really excited being able to partner together and making sure that we're taking care of some of the big issues. And I tell you real quick, I think something that we really do well on Families and Children Committee in both the House and the Senate is we don't deal with sexy issues. We deal with some of the most important vulnerable issues. And I think that's probably part of the reason why we both ran. We wanted to be part of real conversations that change people's lives, not just political rhetoric and acting. And so, I think that's something we do. It's a really tough committee, but we really do try to do a good job of emphasizing the importance of having these conversations and how they really can change the everyday life of Kentuckians.
And I see that every time you all meet, the substance from both Senator Carroll and Representative Heavrin that you all bring to the table, the conversations that you facilitate, it really shines through. So I'm grateful for that. And Senator Carroll, really appreciate the work that you do within the committee. Um, as far as your focus for 26 and child welfare, I'd love to hear it.
Well, there are a lot of issues, and the foster care issue is something that will go on into the interim, and a lot of conversations about infants that are put into foster care. There's always that goal of reunification of the family. I struggle with that, and there are times that I think we go too far to try to save that family when it's not in the best interest of that child. And I have witnessed that personally. I've heard anecdotal stories throughout the state on that. So I think that's something we really need to look at. And there are so many issues dealing with foster care from birth on into services for these kids when they start to age out of foster care, and making sure that we set them up to succeed. So I think there's still a lot of homework to be done in that area. And I know my co-chair has spent a lot of time during the past interim meeting and discussing those issues. And as far as the child fatality, near fatality team, the pediatric ingestion cases are alarming in our Commonwealth. And these are cases where children are ingesting illegal substances, THC related, cocaine, meth, you name it. And it's really becoming such a noticeable problem that we felt compelled that we need to take some action on this. And we met with one of the primary law enforcement agencies in our state, one of the premier agencies in the state, because we noticed a pattern within that agency where they were simply not responding and not investigating these cases. And we had some success with that meeting, and hopefully we're going to see some changes as a result of that. An excellent police agency that struggles with manpower issues, and that's the good thing about this panel. And the purpose of the panel is when we recognize patterns, we try to address those patterns with whatever entity that might be. So what we're doing on the bill related to pediatric ingestion is we're putting this as making this part of the definition of neglect that's in statute. And therefore, as far as criminal abuse charges, parents, caregivers could be charged with criminal abuse under some of these cases. And the idea is to make sure that we're putting a priority on that, and that law enforcement, the DCBS knows that this is an important issue, and there is an expectation from the state that this be taken care of. And I know all the issues related to that with, you want to keep children with their families, but when you hear a lot of these stories on these cases where a child dies or a near fatality, and a lot of times when you hear the criminal history of the parents, you could foresee that something like this was going to happen sooner or later. And so I think it's a point that we just really have to be proactive about that. And that's where this bill comes from. And then we're also going to to give the panel a little bit more authority in that the panel will be able to call in individual entities, whether it be law enforcement, DCBS, and have direct discussions about particular cases. Some of them, it might be we don't have all the information. Some of it might be that, there were just some problems with the investigations or the services. They were inadequate. And it'll be a chance to have direct conversations in closed session, done in a very respectful way, so we can all learn from cases that perhaps didn't go so well. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I think that's going to be something for the panel that will enhance the effectiveness of the panel. And then the other side of that on into with child welfare, the DJJ bill is moving now in the Senate, and the primary aspects of that are simply that we would build an acute mental health detention center to serve kids who are acutely mentally ill that are in the cabinets of Health and Family Service custody or DJJ involved, where these kids could get the treatment that they need. We've all heard the horror stories back from during COVID of all the problems we had in DJJ detention facilities and the mental health issues. And this bill is kind of the last major steps for us to take in building that facility, and also a proposal to build a couple female facilities in the state so we can make sure that the females that are detained in detention centers will be closer to home, because that's a key component of their recovery and hopefully eventual success in their lives and in getting out of the DJJ system and getting back on the right path. So those are the two primary things that I'm looking at, and I do look forward to continued conversations in the child welfare area as we move into the interim and really getting in the weeds on some of these issues and look at where we can do better. And I have to compliment Representative Heavrin. She has done a great job in addressing this issue and getting conversations started. So she may not have a lot of experience in some of these areas, but she has stepped up to learn and invested her time and her heart into this, and it shows.
Thank you.
And you all both, in my experience, deeply listen to individuals who come into your office to really understand and listen to really learn. So I think both of you are just incredible models for what chairpersonship can look like for committees. You will also listen and hear a lot of really tough stuff. Some of the worst, especially as you're sitting on the fatality near fatality panel, and as you're hearing from young people who have experienced just terrible abuse. So really commend both of you for the work that you do within those committees, and especially on the child welfare side of things. We've seen a lot of good improvements. There's definitely more things to be done in order to continue moving things forward within the child welfare system. And I'm really excited to hear about all of what y'all talked about, whether it's, ingestions and kind of the front end of the system to further in the system around those young people with acute behavioral health needs, where there's a lot of crossover between the child welfare and justice system. And I can't wait to see what happens around education. Y'all know we're really invested here at KYA into all of what y'all are talking about, and I'm glad that our committees have the leadership within both of you. So we've only got time for one more question. With the many priorities you have within families and children, and those of your colleagues that are tackling some other things in the General Assembly, are there any other issues that you all are tackling that you want the audience to be aware of outside of your committee, or just things that you all are focused on as they move through the General Assembly?
I'll let you go first on that one,
Okay.
Samara.
I'll kick it off. Thank you, Chairman Carroll. I've got a few bills. I'm looking at my little list on my whiteboard. I think I've got three bills and two that are specifically for children. One would be I worked closely with the Audiologist Association and Anthem Insurance to help give better access to insurance for hearing aids for kiddos. I think it's really important. Probably something a lot of us take for granted if we have good hearing, but hearing aids are very expensive. And so we work to help with network adequacy on hearing aids for kiddos and making and increasing that amount that insurance would cover from $1,500 to $2,400. It passed the House and it now waits in the Senate. I also passed a bill on dyslexia. Both of these bills are bills that came from constituents, and my dyslexia bill was actually a bill that came from moms. And what in law right now it says that boards may make a policy for dyslexia, and that changes it from may to shall, and it gives a few more requirements. But I think it's really important when we see that 1 in 5 kids have dyslexia, and we're struggling with reading like we do. Back to Chairman Carroll talking about kindergarten readiness. This would help encourage. This would require for kids to get tools, especially from kindergarten to third grade. It's even more important because then we go to the juvenile justice section, and that's what we look at. We look at those reading levels and testing for incarceration rates at third grade. And so, if I think that could really make a big difference. We've got a lot of parents pulling their kids out of school to help them with their dyslexic needs or dysgraphia. And so those are two very important bills to me. And the last one I'm working on is called Angela's Law. It's a little more graphic, but she was a year younger than me in school, and she was murdered and raped. And after she was murdered, and in Kentucky, we don't look at rape for victims that have already died. And so trying to figure out what we do with that. This is an issue very important to parents in my district. Angela's parents, Doug and her stepmom, Angie. I grew up playing volleyball with Angie's kiddos. And so trying to figure out what that looks like, that's a really big deal. And then one last thing is consent and voyeurism. We had an issue in Grayson County earlier this year in April where a guy put up over 18, I think it was over 18,000 photos of women that were taken off our Facebook pages and put them on a file hosting website. So I've been working with the Attorney General's office and Kentucky State Police and law enforcement trying to figure out how we tackle that. He posted on a porn website, and none of the photos that were taken from Facebook were pornographic, but they were underage photos. It kind of leads into this whole conversation of what are your rights, and for voyeurism, we look at that back in Peeping Tom when you're looking through someone's window or, whatever. And so I think it's time we bring that up to 2026 and make sure we're also including digital voyeurism. So people can't just make comments that are very crude and demeaning and scary to people. So anyway, it's a big mix there, but we've got lots of irons in the fire.
What about you, Senator Carroll?
Well, my other major bill has been a pretty heavy lift, and it's outside of the scope of this committee, but it's nuclear energy. And
Okay.
so we have a bill that would basically get 3 sites within our Commonwealth prepared for nuclear reactors, and it sets up a pilot program to kind of a P3 partnership between the state and utilities and a hyperscaler like Google, Amazon, or it could be an industry. So the idea is it would split the $75 million fee that's normally associated to get a site prepared, site readiness fee license. So, and it'll go a little bit further than that, but it's kind of the next step along our path to a nuclear ecosystem within the Commonwealth, and a pretty substantial step that will keep us in competition with other states. And Kentucky has risen to the top in this area, and there are a lot of investors, a lot of developers that are wanting to come to Kentucky, and that will create an entire ecosystem within our state, and communities throughout the Commonwealth will benefit from this in economic development, really good paying jobs. Our students will have a new type of technology to be able to get into upon graduation from school, and so new challenges. And we talk a lot about brain drain within our Commonwealth, especially in rural areas. And with the advent of these technologies, I think it's going to be more opportunities, even for rural area students, to get into more technology-based careers. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm pretty excited about where we are as a Commonwealth. And we've had a lot of partnerships with the executive branch. We've worked together through all of this. I'm very proud of our efforts and where we are in standing with the rest of the country. And we hope that we get $150 million investment, 75 for the pilot project, the other 75 million to go towards grants for any aspect of the ecosystem, education, manufacturing, whatever the case might be. So this is going to be big for the Commonwealth as we move forward, and it's going to have a major impact on the quality of life throughout this state and the availability of new jobs and opportunities.
So you all, within your scope, obviously a families and children committee, a lot of focus there, but then also outside of that, you're kind of a jack of all trades in a couple of different areas. And we're grateful to you both for both your head and your heart that you're bringing into the service as a state legislator. I just like to say again, thank you both for joining us today on the podcast, and really grateful for the work you all are doing. I know session can get really tough and busy, and I just appreciate you all taking some time with us to make sure that our advocates are informed on what's going on and what to expect during this legislative session. So again, for our listeners, don't forget to visit kyouth.org to learn more about our blueprint priorities, find advocacy tips, and check out our bill tracker. And just thanks so much for tuning in to the Making Kids Count podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Making Kids Count podcast. For more information and to listen to more episodes, visit kyouth.org/podcast. To support this podcast and our mission as the independent voice for Kentucky kids, please consider making a gift at kyouth.org/donate.